Okay, guys. Firstly, thank you so much for the very gracious introduction. I definitely don't deserve it, more so because all the PGB ones and twos here will realize I've prepared for this TED talk exactly how we all prepare for our assignments, which means I've written it on my way here on the flight, and there's going to be a lot of pitch decks here because we need speaker notes to present. So yeah, so yesterday I asked on my Instagram, what people want to hear me talk about my first TED talk ever. And the kind of answers that came up were resilience, failure, grit, how do you convert ideas into real startups, etc. So we're going to talk about all of that, right? No, we're not going to talk about any of that because I feel you guys already know what the answers are to all of this. All the speakers before me, everything that you see on the internet, are people a lot more accomplished than me, have spoken about each of them in immense clarity and depth. So you don't need to know that. So the deeper question, what's really stopping you when you know all the answers? So this is something we're going to try and do here. So my talk is, this is not a TED talk, right? And in typical three Instagram content creation frameworks, I'm going to tell you three reasons why this is not a TED talk. Reason number one, why it's not a TED talk. I'm not going to inspire you to achieve your dreams or do the impossible. In fact, it's going to be the opposite. I'm going to give you a clear reality check of what it really takes to try and achieve what you want. Even once you achieve your goals, dream, success, how life is still full of pain and suffering. And finally, is it even worth it? Hint, yes, it is, but not for the reasons you might think. So, second reason why this is not going to be a TED talk. I'm not going to give you any roadmap for success. I'm not going to give you a checklist of things you should do, the importance of hard work, grit, organizing your time, building a team, planning, all of that. And anyway, I feel if you sum total all the advice you get from all the great entrepreneurs and all the successful people on the internet and add it up, it adds up to zero. So, this is not going to be a lecture on grit, hard work, or perseverance. What it's going to be about is whatever little I've achieved, and from the biographies of over 50 of the most successful people that I have read, one thing I've realized undeniably, it's often luck that will dictate the trajectory of your life way more than your own inputs. So, right place, right time, and right people will often dictate the amplitude of your success way more than things within your control. And I can understand why this is such an uncomfortable thought, right? Because all of us would love to feel like that our hard work, our actions are the ones that are dictating our success. But if you just look at it objectively, more often than not, it's something outside your control, which is luck. And finally, the third reason it's not going to be like a TED talk is I'm going to try and actually follow the theme, which is beyond the veil. So I'm going to try and actually unmask reality as we were prompted to do. So what's going to follow now is going to be a series of uncomfortable truths about the acquisition of success, the mindset that's stopping you from getting what you want, and finally realizing how life is ultimately unfair. And finally, why none of it matters in the first place. So let's start with unmasking reality. The most dangerous lies are not what others tell us or what we tell others. They're the ones that we tell ourselves, right? Because the biggest, baddest, thickest mask that we need to unmask for reality is the one that separates what we truly believe versus what we tell ourselves we believe. So I'll give you an example, right? I'll demonstrate this real quick. Why am I here giving this talk? To hopefully inspire you, to give back to the next generation of entrepreneurs, and to share whatever little ideas I have, right? But why am I really here giving this talk if I stop lying to myself, right? Fame, money, and power. The holy trinity of what success is defined as in modernity. How fame? Fairly obvious. If this goes on the internet, gets 100K, 1 mil, 10 mil, whatever amount of views, right? I get more famous. Money. If I get more famous, I get more recognition. So that means I can act in more and more ads for my brand and we make more ROI and more money. that way. Also, we don't have to pay larger content creators and influencers, so we save money as well. Power. This one's a little nuanced, but a lot of TEDx conferences approached me this year to speak. This is my first one that I'm actually doing it at, and the reason is you guys. I am Lucknow. Brand association, brand recognition matters. Also, my idea is if I can influence all of you in some little way, it will give me some advantage and some leverage in hiring from a great talent pool down the line. So that's power. Let's do another round of this, right? In the spirit of just trying and being honest to ourselves. Why I built Culture Circle? Of course, I was super passionate about the idea, about the market, about the category. I had a bunch of customer insights and I could spot a gap in the market that no one else could. Finally, we combined it with a bunch of market research and thesis about building the distribution channel for the top 1% income bracket, right? Now, all of this is true, right? But all of this is a version of the truth that I love to tell myself. So, why I really built Culture Circle? It's a series of my breakup, my insecurities, and my embarrassment. So, we'll start the breakup, right? Starting of Culture Circle coincided with my first very, very terrible breakup, right? So, it was the perfect incentive for me to just put in 16, 18, 20 hours a day because I did not know what else to do with that level of energy. Also, it was a very typical, naive, juvenile, stupid sort of instinct to show your ex what she lost out on, right? Next one, insecurity. I'm Ahmedabad, my business school, and I was convinced that everyone around me was way more hardworking than me and way more prepared for the upcoming placement season than I was. So I just decided to change the game I'm playing. Let me not sit for placements. Let me try something of my own. That way, I have a chance to compete better. Embarrassment. My first venture. We scaled it up to a certain level, but we've failed to scale it up beyond to what we really wanted, what I had promised to people around me, to my parents, and most importantly, to myself, right? And I was embarrassed about it. So Culture Circle was my chance at redemption. Maybe the second time I can prove to myself that I'm not such an idiot and prove to my parents that I'm capable. So this was the real reason why I built Culture Circle. The idea is stop lying to yourself. And honestly, it's easier said than done. We all lie to ourselves daily about what we really feel. So I'm not going to try and pretend I can do that. I don't think neither can you. But here's something you can attempt. There is the truth and there is the narrative you tell yourself about the truth. Hopefully, over time, we can reduce the distance between both of these things, right? Because that is a strategy I have personally witnessed to lead to the best outcomes that you want out of your life. And the three fundamental principles that I'm going to talk about next, hopefully if we can just separate the truth and the narrative about the truth, just know that we create that difference, it will help you apply that better. So here's what we have covered. Why this is not a TED Talk, why am I not here, and why did I not build Culture Circle. The next thing and the final thing we're going to cover is how to not build a $100 million venture in 2 years. So let's start with why am I talking about why to not build it. Number one, because that fact is not true. Depending on which VC or investor you ask, we are between $75 to $85 million a year, and it's been 18 months, not 2 years. But $100 million in 2 years just sounds catchier for marketing. Inversion. Our brains are way better at detecting threats. We are evolutionary coded to detect threats way better than finding new opportunities. So whenever we invert something, it's easier for us to remember what not to do, what to avoid. And finally, the $100 million venture here is frankly meaningless because you can replace it with your idea of success, whatever that might be. Happiness, peace, or whatever, right? These three fundamental rules will still apply. So, how to not build a $100 million venture in 2 years? The first way to not build a $100 million venture in 2 years is believing that life is fair. Now, I feel very passionately about this topic because all throughout school, university, I used to believe life is fair. The world is moral and just. If you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. And I would complain. I would complain a lot. This is unfair, that is unfair, etc., etc., etc. Until I realized all of this complaining achieves nothing. It does nothing. Nobody cares. The world does not owe you. to be fair. And after 2 instances of clinical depression, I just realized that nobody cares about your sob story, because the market does not care how sad you are. The goals you have set for yourself will not care how sad you are. So, just to recap, life is inherently unfair and it will be full of pain and inconveniences. Right now, you might feel you're at a unique position where life has given you some pain or disadvantage that's very unique to you. But please understand, I promise you, there's someone who's had it worse and still become world class at something. So, what's the point of that? And people say pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice. Now, I'm not as enlightened as those philosophers of the past. For me, what I've learned a thing or two about is you will suffer. But what you can do is you can suffer, accept the suffering, move on, and still try. Because you might have a valid excuse for everything that you're going through. However, even though no matter how valid your excuse is, I agree with you, I believe you 100%, it's still not going to matter, because what are you going to do? Not achieve your goals? Okay, then that's on you. So, and it's not easy to do, right? A big part of the reason that my first venture failed was actually I couldn't control my emotions and how emotional I got. And the ultimate realization out of that experience was that nobody cares. That's my first episode of clinical depression. I realized that, I have a bunch of realizations that, I had things happen to me and my family that you would not wish on your worst enemy. But guess what? Nobody cares. I realized how unfair life is, how immoral people are. I lost faith in everything around me, including myself. But guess what? Nobody cares. My customers did not care. My investors did not care. Now I can make this vision very grandiose and self-serve my ego and media friendly, saying, oh, this will do so much for the planet. We'll probably, and it's true, we're probably going to do more for the planet than 80% of the sustainable fashion startups that you'll ever see. Because if someone's buying 50,000 rupees t-shirt, they're going to wear it that much more. It's going to end up that much lesser in a landfill. But it's important that I don't lie to myself. The vision we're building towards is crystal clear so that we can be consistent and motivated. Now, for the final part of the presentation, guys, the third and the final way to not build $100 million venture is taking life seriously. Now, this is something, if you can forget everything so far, right? And remember one thing, just make sure this is the take home. Because see, life is ultimately a game and it's made up of a bunch of mini games. Right? We play a lot of mini games: career, health, wealth, friendships, relationships, traveling. These are all mini games that comprise the large complex game of life. And these games, either the society has chosen for us or we have chosen for ourselves. But the idea is, 100 years after the game is over, the ultimate game is over, nothing is going to matter. It's going to be irrelevant. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's all a theater. Right. So this is going to sound very diabolical, but let me tell you, if you are really, really ambitious, you should definitely not be taking life seriously. And I'll tell you why. If you're really ambitious, you're going to play higher games in life, games with higher stakes in life, right? And the higher you play, the steeper will be your fall, because that's just life. You win some, you lose some. Some days you're in the red, some days in the green. And if you get too attached to the outcomes, it becomes just so much harder to get yourself back up when you will fall down. So you need to realize that ultimately, the outcomes of whatever you do are not in your control. There are a bunch of infinite variables that play. And if you get too bogged down with the outcomes and not with your actions, you will get bogged down and stay down. So the optimal mindset that I suggest, right, for existence, for life, that has served me, I call it the gaming mindset of sorts. So the gaming mindset is when you're in the game, whatever the game might be. For now, it's career. For now, might be health, wealth, whatever. When you're in the game, play the game to win the game, or at least do your best, whatever that means, right? But once you're out of the game, be very open to realizing that ultimately the game is irrelevant, laughing at its impermanence and how seriously you took it the moment it's over, right? And we often do the reverse, if you think about it. We're stuck up in the past or in the future thinking, what if I fail? What if I not fail? What if I succeed? What will I do next? Why did I fail earlier? And we're so caught up thinking about the outcomes that when the actual game arrives, we don't even give our best at playing the game because of how bogged down we are. And what we should be doing is actually the opposite. Neither victory nor defeat should be taken seriously once it's over. So yeah, be serious in the games, but not serious in life, because life is also ultimately just a game. Because if I ask you guys, who was the richest person on the planet 300 years ago? Or 200 years ago? Or the most successful person by your definition between 1500 and 1600 AD? Even if you know the answer, do you really care about that person? Think about it, right? So eventually, the outcomes will not matter, no matter what you achieve when you're here. So why get bogged down by them right now? So finally, right, I'm just going to finish this with saying this talk is also a mini game. If you think about it for me, right? This had its rules, regulations, criteria, outcome, time limit that I've probably exceeded, right? And when you observe, when I'm in the game, I will try my best to deliver the message, to play the game to the best of my ability. But now that the game is over, I will not take it that seriously. And I've tried to demonstrate it with this entire presentation as to how I've not taken it too seriously. Because if you think about it, what have we really covered? Why is this not a TED Talk? Why am I not here? Why did I not really build Culture Circle? And how to not build $100 million venture in 2 years? So yeah, that's all from my end. Finally, just going to leave you with two parting thoughts. Life is too short, so make a dent while you're here. But at the same time, remember, lighten up. Laugh at yourself. No, none of us really know what we're doing. Because if you really think about it, we're all just a bunch of evolved monkeys on a blue rock that's revolving around one of the millions of fireballs in this cosmos. So why take yourself so seriously? Thank you so much for not coming to my TED Talk.